Victor Sterling stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse office on Michigan Avenue, watching the Chicago skyline glitter beneath him like scattered diamonds. At 35, he had built an empire that stretched across 4 states, transforming his father's modest construction company into a billion-dollar real estate dynasty. But his greatest pride was not his business success. It was his perfect record. 40 women, 40 victories, 6 years without a single loss. His assistant knocked softly before entering. "Mr. Sterling, your guests have arrived in the private lounge." Victor adjusted his custom-tailored suit and checked his reflection one last time. Everything about him was calculated for maximum impact. The perfectly styled dark hair, the cologne that cost more than most people's monthly rent, the watch that could fund a small business. He was a weapon designed for seduction, and he never missed his target. The private lounge of his building was reserved for his most exclusive meetings. James Park, a tech entrepreneur and his oldest friend, sat nursing a scotch, while Owen Mitchell, who owned a chain of luxury hotels, paced near the fireplace. "Gentlemen," Victor announced, spreading his arms wide, "are we ready to make this interesting?" James set down his glass with a heavy sound. "Victor, we need to talk about this challenge of yours. It has gone too far." Victor laughed, pouring himself a drink. "Because I keep winning? That sounds like jealousy, my friend." Owen stopped pacing and turned to face him. "It has gone too far because you treat women like prizes in a game. You have forgotten that they are human beings with feelings and dignity." The smile faded from Victor's face. "They all know the rules before they agree. Nobody is forcing them to participate. If they choose to take the bet, that is their decision." James leaned forward. "And what about you? When was the last time you had a genuine conversation with a woman? When did you last care about something beyond winning?" Victor felt a flash of anger. "You sound like my therapist. If you have such a problem with my lifestyle, why are you here?" "Because we want to make you one final offer," Owen said quietly. "One last bet, but this time we choose the woman, and the stakes are different." Victor's interest was caught despite himself. "What stakes?" James pulled out a contract from his briefcase. $8 million. If you win, we each pay you $4 million. If you lose, you donate every penny you have ever won from these bets to charity, and you stop this game forever. Victor studied the document, his mind racing. $8 million was significant even for him, but more importantly, his pride was on the line. "Who is the woman?" Owen smiled slightly. "Her name is Nina Chen. She's 26 years old, works as a paramedic, and studies medicine at night. She has no idea who you are or how much money you have." "A paramedic?" Victor almost laughed. "You think a woman who works around life and death situations will be impressed by my lifestyle? This will be my easiest victory yet." "Do not be so sure," warned James. "Nina is different from anyone you have ever met. She has spent her entire adult life taking care of others. She raised her younger brother alone after their parents died. She works 3 jobs to pay for his college tuition while finishing her own medical degree." Victor waved his hand dismissively. "A tragic backstory does not make someone immune to attraction. Everyone has weaknesses. I just need to find hers." Owen exchanged a glance with James. "There is one more condition. You cannot use money as a seduction tool. You meet her as a consultant for one of my hotels, not as a billionaire. You have 48 hours to make her fall for you based on who you are, not what you own." This caught Victor off guard, but only for a moment. His confidence surged back immediately. "Money is just one tool in my arsenal. I have charm, intelligence, looks. I can make any woman fall in love with me, regardless of my bank account." "Then you accept?" James asked. Victor signed the contract with a flourish. "I accept. When do I meet this Nina Chen?" "Tomorrow morning.
Owen replied. "I have arranged for her to help with a special project at my new hotel downtown. You will be introduced as a consultant from New York who needs someone to show you around Chicago and help evaluate the city's medical facilities for a potential investment. She thinks it's a legitimate job that pays well, which she desperately needs." "Perfect," Victor said, already planning his approach. 48 hours from tomorrow morning. By then, she will be completely under my spell." As his friends left, Victor poured himself another drink and looked out at the city again. He felt no guilt about the deception. In his mind, he was giving these women a gift, a glimpse into a world of luxury and passion they would never otherwise experience. If they fell for him, that was simply proof of his superiority. What Victor didn't know was that across the city, in a small apartment in Pilsen, Nina Chen was finishing a double shift, studying anatomy textbooks while her younger brother slept in the next room. She was exhausted but determined, driven by a sense of purpose that had nothing to do with money or romance. She had no interest in games or challenges. She had no time for distractions. Her life was built on hard work, sacrifice, and an unwavering commitment to helping others. Victor Sterling was about to meet the one person who could not be bought, charmed, or manipulated, and neither of them was prepared for what would happen when an unstoppable force met an immovable object. The stage was set, the bet was made, and tomorrow morning, two completely different worlds would collide in ways that would change both of their lives forever.
Nina Chen arrived at the Meridian Hotel at exactly 8 in the morning, carrying a worn leather bag that had belonged to her father. She had spent the previous evening researching Chicago's medical facilities, preparing notes about the city's healthcare infrastructure, and reviewing her understanding of hospital consultancy work. The job paid $3,000 for 2 days of work, which meant she could finally fix the leak in her apartment's ceiling and buy her brother the textbooks he needed for next semester. The hotel lobby was stunning, all marble floors and crystal chandeliers. Nina felt out of place in her simple gray blazer and black pants, the nicest professional clothes she owned. A woman in an elegant suit approached her with a warm smile. "You must be Nina Chen. I am Rebecca, Mr. Mitchell's assistant. Thank you so much for helping us with this project. Please follow me." They took the elevator to the top floor, where a private meeting room overlooked Lake Michigan. The view was breathtaking, but Nina barely had time to appreciate it before the door opened and a man walked in. Victor Sterling had dressed down for this meeting, wearing jeans and a simple button-down shirt instead of his usual designer suits. He wanted to appear approachable, relatable. But even in casual clothes, there was something about him that commanded attention. He was tall, with dark eyes that seemed to take in everything at once, and he moved with the confidence of someone who had never been told no. "You must be Nina," he said, extending his hand. "I am Victor. Thank you for agreeing to help me understand Chicago's medical landscape." Nina shook his hand firmly. Her grip was strong, her palms slightly calloused from years of physical work. "Of course. Mr. Mitchell mentioned you were looking into medical facilities for potential investment?" Victor nodded, settling into a chair across from her. He had expected someone nervous, easily impressed. Instead, Nina met his gaze directly, her expression professional and focused. Something about her immediate composure threw him slightly off balance. "That is right. I have been considering expanding into healthcare real estate, but I need to understand how the system works from the ground level. I understand you work as a paramedic?" "For the past 5 years," Nina confirmed. "I am also completing my medical degree. I specialize in emergency medicine." Victor leaned forward, genuinely curious despite himself. "That must be incredibly demanding. How do you manage both?" "You just do what needs to be done," Nina said, simply. "When you have responsibilities, you find a way to meet them." There was no self-pity in her voice, no plea for sympathy, just a statement of fact. Victor found himself intrigued. Most people he met either bragged about their accomplishments or complained about their struggles. Nina did neither. "Tell me about a typical day in your work," he asked, abandoning his usual script of flattery and charm. And Nina did.
She spoke about responding to emergency calls, about the adrenaline of arriving at accident scenes, about the satisfaction of saving lives, and the heartbreak of losing patients. She described the challenges of Chicago's healthcare system, the gaps in coverage that left vulnerable populations without care, the heroic efforts of overworked nurses and doctors trying to fill those gaps. Victor listened, and for the first time in years, he was not performing. He was genuinely interested. Nina spoke with such passion and clarity that he found himself drawn into her world, forgetting about the bet, forgetting about his usual tactics. "Last week," Nina said, her voice softening, "we responded to a call in Inglewood. A little girl, maybe 7 years old, had an asthma attack. Her mother did not have money for an inhaler, so she had been rationing the medication. By the time we arrived, the child was barely breathing." "What happened?" Victor asked, leaning forward. "We saved her," Nina said, "but it should never have gotten to that point. That mother should not have had to choose between feeding her family and buying life-saving medication for her daughter. These are the realities I see every single day." Victor sat back, something uncomfortable stirring in his chest. He had never thought about these issues before. His world was of luxury penthouses and exclusive clubs, where the biggest problems were which restaurant to choose for dinner or which exotic location to visit for vacation. "You really care about this," he said quietly. Nina looked at him as if he had said something strange. "Of course I care. These are people's lives. How could I not care?" They spent the rest of the morning visiting hospitals and clinics. Victor had arranged for a driver, but Nina insisted they take public transportation. She wanted him to see the real city, she explained, not the sanitized version wealthy visitors usually experienced. On the train, Victor watched Nina interact with other passengers. She helped an elderly woman with her bags, gave directions to confused tourists, and chatted easily with a young mother struggling with 2 small children. She moved through the world with a natural kindness that seemed completely effortless. At noon, they stopped for lunch at a small diner in Bridgeport. Victor initially suggested an upscale restaurant downtown, but Nina had insisted on this place. "Best Mexican food in Chicago," she said, sliding into a worn vinyl booth. "And the owner, Mrs. Rodriguez, she put 3 kids through college working here. I have known her since I was a child." Mrs. Rodriguez came over immediately, hugging Nina warmly and eyeing Victor with friendly suspicion. "Who is this, mija? Finally, you bring a boyfriend around." Nina blushed. "He's not my boyfriend, Mrs. Rodriguez. We're working together on a project." The older woman winked. "That's how it always starts. I'll bring you both the special." As they ate, Victor found himself sharing things he never talked about. He told Nina about his childhood, about a mother who left when he was 8, about a father who was physically present but emotionally absent, buried in work. He told her about the loneliness of growing up in a house filled with nannies and housekeepers but empty of real connection. Nina listened without judgment or pity. When he finished, she was quiet for a moment before speaking. "Loneliness is one of the hardest things to carry sometimes, because grief has a shape and a name. Loneliness is just this emptiness that never quite goes away." "You sound like you understand," Victor said. Nina nodded. "After my parents died in the fire, I had my brother, but I also felt completely alone. I was 20 years old, suddenly responsible for a 12-year-old kid, with no parents, no safety net, no plan. Every decision I made felt terrifying because there was nobody to catch me if I failed." "How did you handle it?" Nina smiled slightly. "I learned that being alone and being lonely are not the same thing. I found purpose in taking care of my brother, in my work, in helping others. The loneliness never completely disappeared, but it became manageable when I filled my life with meaning instead of trying to fill it with people." Victor stared at her, something shifting deep in his chest. He had spent 6 years filling his life with conquests, with victories, with proof of his desirability, but he had never once considered filling it with meaning. The afternoon passed quickly. They visited 3 more hospitals, and with each stop, Victor saw the healthcare system through Nina's eyes. He met nurses working 16-hour shifts, doctors treating patients in overcrowded emergency rooms, families waiting hours for basic care. By evening, when they returned to the hotel, Victor was exhausted but strangely energized. He had learned more in one day with Nina than he had in months of his usual activities. "Thank you for today," he said as they stood in the lobby. "I learned a lot." Nina smiled, and Victor realized it was the first time he had seen her truly smile all day. "You're welcome. Same time tomorrow?" "Actually," Victor said impulsively, "would you like to have dinner with me? Not as part of the job, just because I would enjoy your company." Nina hesitated, and Victor felt genuine nervousness for the first time in years. He realized with surprise that he actually cared what her answer would be. "I should not," Nina said finally. "I have studying to do, and my brother will be waiting for dinner." "Please," Victor said, and the word felt foreign on his tongue. He couldn't remember the last time he had genuinely asked someone for something. "Just an hour. There's a small Italian place near here. Nothing fancy." Nina studied his face for a long moment, and Victor had the unsettling feeling that she was seeing right through him, past all his carefully constructed defenses. "1 hour," she agreed finally, "but I'm paying for my own meal." Victor opened his mouth to protest, then closed it. Something told him that arguing would end the evening before it began. "Deal," he said. As they walked to the restaurant, Victor found himself wondering what was happening to him. He had spent the entire day forgetting about the bet, forgetting about his tactics, forgetting about everything except getting to know this remarkable woman who seemed completely unimpressed with everything that usually made people impressed. For the first time in 6 years, Victor Sterling was not playing a game, and he had no idea what that meant.
The small Italian restaurant was tucked between a bookstore and a flower shop, the kind of place that survived on loyal neighborhood customers rather than trendy reviews. Nina had chosen it deliberately, Victor suspected, because it was the opposite of everywhere he would normally take someone he wanted to impress. They sat at a corner table with a red and white checkered tablecloth, and Nina ordered spaghetti carbonara without even looking at the menu. Victor found himself ordering the same thing, not because he particularly wanted it, but because he was curious about what Nina would choose. The owner, an elderly Italian man named Giuseppe, came over to greet Nina with the same warmth Mrs. Rodriguez had shown earlier. Victor watched as Nina inquired about his grandson's soccer team and his wife's recent surgery. She remembered details about people's lives, carried their stories with her, cared about their struggles and victories as if they were their own. "You know everyone in this city," Victor observed after Giuseppe left. "Not everyone," Nina said, twirling pasta on her fork. "Just the people who matter, the ones who work hard and care about their communities and show up for each other when things get difficult." There was no judgment in her voice, but Victor felt it anyway. He thought about his own life, his exclusive clubs and private lounges, his carefully curated social circle of wealthy entrepreneurs and beautiful women. He could not name a single person he knew the way Nina knew these ordinary people. "Tell me about your brother," Victor said, wanting to know more about what shaped this woman who seemed so different from everyone else in his world. Nina's face softened immediately. "Thomas is 19 now. He is studying engineering at Northwestern, full scholarship, which is incredible because I never could have afforded the tuition. He is brilliant, much smarter than I ever was." "I doubt that," Victor said. "You were completing a medical degree while working full-time. That requires exceptional intelligence." Nina shook her head. "Thomas has the kind of mind that solves complex problems for fun. I just have determination and stubbornness. They are not the same thing." "They can be just as valuable," Victor said quietly. Nina looked at him with surprise, as if she had not expected him to understand that distinction. "Maybe," she said. "Thomas tells me I should rest more, that I push myself too hard. But I made a promise to our parents the night they died. I promised I would make sure he had every opportunity they would have given him. That is a heavy promise to carry alone." "It was the only promise that mattered," Nina said, simply. They talked through dinner, and Victor found himself sharing more truths. He told her about the emptiness of his victories, the hollow feeling that followed each conquest, the growing awareness that he was building nothing of substance despite all his success. "Sometimes I look at my life and wonder what the point is," he admitted. "I have more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes. I have proven I can have any woman I want, but I cannot remember the last time I felt genuinely happy." Nina was quiet for a moment, considering his words carefully.
Maybe because you are trying to fill a void with things that were never meant to fill it. Money and conquest give you power, but they do not give you purpose, and without purpose, nothing ever feels like enough. "What is your purpose?" Victor asked. "To help people who cannot help themselves," Nina said without hesitation. "To be there in the moments when everything falls apart and someone needs another person to hold them together. That is why I became a paramedic. That is why I am becoming a doctor." Victor felt something crack open inside him, some wall he had built years ago to protect himself from feeling too much. He looked at Nina across the table, this woman who had nothing compared to his wealth, but somehow had everything that mattered, and he realized with stunning clarity that he was falling in love with her. The thought terrified him. In 6 years of his game, he had never actually fallen for anyone. He had simulated interest, performed affection, mimicked connection, but this feeling, this genuine desire to know someone, to be better for them, to earn their respect, was completely new. His phone buzzed, a text from James. 24 hours down, halfway there. How is the challenge going? Victor stared at the message, and suddenly the weight of what he was doing crashed over him. Nina had no idea this was a game. She thought he was a consultant, a potential friend, maybe even someone worth trusting, and he was lying to her about everything. The realization made him feel physically sick. "Is everything okay?" Nina asked, noticing his expression. Victor looked up at her concerned face and knew he could not continue the deception. But he also knew that telling her the truth right now would destroy whatever was building between them. He was trapped by his own game. "Everything is fine," he lied, hating himself for it. "Just work." They finished dinner, and Victor walked Nina to the train station. Under the streetlights of Chicago, with the city humming around them, he found himself not wanting the evening to end. "Thank you for today," Nina said. "You are not what I expected." "What did you expect?" Nina smiled. "Someone more focused on business, less interested in actually understanding people. You surprised me." "You surprised me too," Victor said honestly. "I have never met anyone quite like you." There was a moment of connection between them, something real and fragile. Then Nina's train arrived, and she was gone, leaving Victor standing on the platform feeling more alone than he had in years. He went home to his penthouse and poured himself a drink he didn't want. His phone rang. Owen calling. "How is it going with Nina?" his friend asked. Victor was silent for a long moment. "I need to tell her the truth." "What? Victor, you're halfway through the challenge. Are you going to throw away $8 million? "I don't care about the money," Victor said, surprising himself with how true it was. "This was wrong from the beginning. She's a good person, and I'm lying to her. I need to tell her the truth. If you tell her now, you lose the bet, and more importantly, you'll hurt her."